Rev up your engines! Well, GM's lack of quality is showing up yet again. They're recalling some Tahoes, Yukons, and Escalades because the rear drive shaft, they freeze up and break. If your drive shaft breaks when you're going 60 miles an hour, not a good thing. It's flying around really fast. Who knows what it's going to hit or what's going to break. If it kind of locked up, you could skid because the rear axle would lock up. It's not a thing you want happening to your car. Now, this includes Chevy Tahoe, Suburbans, GMC Yukon, Yukon XL, Cadillac Escalade, and Escalade ESV. So, get your VIN numbers and you want to look it up. The only problem is they're not going to notify you until mid-March. So, they always make you wait. It turns out that they have recirculated balls on drive shaft assemblies, and they didn't heat treat them right. So they can deform and they make noise and vibration. And the drive shaft assembly could then seize and you wouldn't have any power anymore. Not something you want happening. Now GM claims that, well, it won't all of a sudden just break off. It'll make a lot of noise before it breaks off. Regardless, you want to pay all that money for those super expensive giant SUVs, right? And the drive shaft wasn't even made right and it can just break and fall off. That tells you their lack of quality. Now, of course, they're not saying anything about where these drive shaft assemblies come from. They'll never tell you. But in the past, from my experience as a mechanic, a lot of these GM big trucks like that with rear-wheel drive in Mexico, and their quality control's crap there. I'd love to know if this part was made in Mexico. They're not telling anybody about it. But back in the day, a bunch of these, when they started making them in Mexico, the rear ends would just wear out too fast because they did not put them together right. Now, in this case, they're not manufactured right because they didn't heat treat them right. So I'd be leery about shelling all that money out for a vehicle and then it just turns to be a rolling pile of junk. If it's breaking already, imagine when it gets older. Delvani 3 says, I got 2015 Hyundai Elantra. It jerks when I take off from a red light. I changed the ignition coils and spark plugs, but it has a little jerk coming off from a red light. That's a load. When your car acts jerky under a load, generally it means you're either not getting the right spark or the right fuel. You change the spark plugs and the ignition coils, so odds are it has nothing to do with that. It's probably more of a fuel-related problem. Now, you got 105,000 miles on a 7-year-old Hyundai. So, the best thing to do would be try my video, make your car run better with a little spray cleaner, get the spray cleaner and clean everything up. If that doesn't work, get some good fuel injection cleaner. I like the one that my friend Bernie in Albuquerque makes, the Automotive Test Solutions ATS cleaner. It's expensive, but you pour it in a gas tank and it actually works. Because if your fuel injector is a little dirty and there's a little carbon buildup, they'll get rid of it, and that can get rid of the hesitation too. So try that stuff first. Turkish Burke says, can you change out the brake fluid without flushing at the wheels? Well, you could get a reasonable amount out of the turkey baster, but it's not a good idea. Because what you're trying to do is get rid of the most degraded fluid that's in your brake system, right? Well, the ones that degrade the most are the ones at the wheels. Because when you slam on your brakes, all the kinetic energy of your car is turned into heat right there at the rotors and the brake either wheel cylinders or calipers. So all the fluid in there gets the hottest. It's the one that's going to degrade the most. So the ones that you want to get rid of the most of the fluid is the one at the wheels. So it's not that hard to bleed them at the wheels. You just have somebody pump the brakes, then you open it up and go, then you tighten it up, then they pick it up and do that 4 or 5 times on each wheel. You want to bleed them at the wheels. The dirtiest fluid is at the wheels. You do want to bleed. And it's not that much harder to do. As long as you don't get air into the system, you don't have to worry about having to have a fancy computer to bleed ABS brakes because you're not getting air in the system. Once you get air in the system, like you open the master cylinder line and air gets in the system, air gets into the ABS system, you can't bleed it without a fancy tool like I have as a mechanic. But you can still bleed them at each wheel by just having a guy pump the brakes up, then you open the bleeder, it comes out, then you close it, and then when they pick it up, it's closed so it doesn't suck air in. You got to do it at the wheels, though. It says, I got a question about cam phasers in the 2019 Ford Expedition. Can you explain the problem Ford has with the cam phasers in those 3.5 EcoBoost engine? I got 2 service bulletins from Ford on this issue. All right, well, here's the thing. Even in the past, way before 2019. Cam phasers are broken in Fords all the time. They're so bad on older Fords that I've actually installed them. You can buy a kit that bypasses it, that comes with pieces, and it locks the cams in place. So they're like an old car where they're not adjustable. You set in one place. Well, Ford's always had problems with them, and they have problems with the new ones, too. The problem, of course, is the engineers are told, we want to make these things as cheap as possible so we can make more profit. And obviously, they've gone too cheap, and they're having a problem with the cam phasers on the newer ones. You think they would have learned from having problems with the older ones, but, you know, that's the problem. When you have this philosophy of let's make them as cheap as we can so we can make the biggest profit we can, and if you got an engine that's very complex and has to have solid parts that really hold up for a long time, you're going to have problems making them cheaper. And then, of course, they keep changing designs. What happens when you change a design? You often make a mistake, and then that design has to be repaired because of the mistakes that were made. You know, that's the problem with American manufacturers. Unlike the Japanese that gradually build them up better, and they build on what they have. And the Americans are like, oh, that didn't work, crap. Throw that away. Let's try something else. And then that doesn't work. Throw that away. Let's try something else. It's a completely different philosophy, and that's why they have problems, because rather than perfect one, they throw the baby away with the bathwater and then make another design. And then if that's got problems, instead of perfecting it, they come out with yet another design. It's just stupid from the top down, actually. You know, you can't blame the engineers because they're told, we want this. We want better gas mods. We want to make them cheaper. What can you do? And they got to do what they're told. It's not like the engineers are making the stuff wrong deliberately. They have so many constraints on them. You can only spend so much on this. You know, it can only cost so much to make, but it's got to get better gas mods and have more power. You know, the engineers are being hit from both sides. But it's problems that they've always had with those things, and they seem to continue to go along the same route of making mistakes and not perfecting one design, but switching them out to other designs, and then they have problems. Anthony, age 30, says, can anyone help? I got an 07 Subaru, and it's throwing a code P0607, Performance Control Module. Nobody can figure out what's wrong. Help. The Performance Control Module probably isn't bad. You rarely see them go bad on Subarus. What happens is, if you have something as simple as a loose battery cable or a corroded one, check that. A weak battery, have it load tested. Guys like me, auto parts store guys, they can load test your battery in a minute. If that's low, it can do it. If it's not that, check the wires. You can also have a loose ground on the module. The ground wire might be corroded. Go to the computer itself, the module, and check that. Check the wiring to make sure that nothing's loose, or when you disconnect where the connectors are, get a flashlight and look. If you see a lot of green corrosion, it's corroded. You can clean it with spray electrical cleaner, brush it all off, put it back together again so it's not corroded. That could be your entire problem. You might not need a computer or anything. Once those things go wacky, you can get all kinds of other codes too, and you say you also have PO222 and PO122. Once the module gets nuts, it can start tripping codes down the line. So pray it's a loose or corroded battery terminal. I've seen that happen all the time in those. Start with the simple stuff. Anytime you get any kind of computer failure in a car, first thing, check all the wiring and the battery terminals, and make sure you got a good battery. Because if you got a weak battery, say instead of putting out 12.6 volts when you test it, it's like 11.2, you won't have enough power, and then the computers start going bananas. But here's yet another reason not to use that rental company Turo, where you rent somebody else's vehicle, right? I attempted to rent a Tesla last year, and the guys, an hour after he was supposed to be there, said, I'm not coming, and never showed up with a vehicle. Turns out there's this guy by the name of William Bird. He rented a Ford Bronco. And it was fine. He rented, didn't have any problems. But then the guy starts saying, oh, I found dog hairs in the car. You had a dog. You got to pay him the dog deposit for $173. The guy gave him a piece of the dog's hair, and the guy says, this is not my dog's hair. Here's my dog. You know, it's a different dog hair. It's not mine. Don't say I had a dog in there. They dismissed the $170.78 cleaning fee, but then it was replaced by a $500 damage deposit fee for scratches. He said there was a dog in there that scratched things. Then he got a $4,400 to $5,300 estimate for replacing the leather seats and the interior and stuff in it. Well, rather than get involved in lawyers, don't rent from Turo. You're renting somebody else's car. Who knows what kind of a nutcase you're going to get it from? In my case, I tried to rent a Tesla because I was making a video on Tesla. Well, the guy calls up and emails me an hour after he was supposed to be there. He's supposed to be here at 11, and at noon I get a little notification, and I look, and I see in a text, he's not showing up. Stay away from Turo. Who knows what kind of a nutcase? Maybe he's got a problem with the car. He rents it to you, and then he knows it's got this problem. He says, he wrecked my car. He's got to pay for this now. Just stay away from it. Stay away from Turo. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.